Anupama ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Enriching our brains with new and valuable information improves our ability to think, analyze, and process the world around us. Education and learning is important because it broadens our knowledge. And this knowledge then opens our minds to new perspectives, ideas, beliefs, and cultures. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Anupama, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration, wholeheartedly welcome everyone to this Corporate Academia Connect on e-business subject. To begin the session, let me tell you one thing that this concept, Corporate Academia Connect, is the brainchild of our beloved principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar Sir. The students, when they get the overview of the concepts taught in the class, they also need to get exposed to that fact that how the concepts which is taught in the class actually being put into practice. So in that regard, he had an idea to connect the academia with the corporate through case study experiences with the expert who has a practical exposure in that area. Sir, thank you very much for having given us this opportunity to organize this event today. We have a very experienced and a learned friend of mine who would help us to understand the concept of importance of e-security in the subject e-business, e-commerce, which is a syllabus of 6th semester BBA and 4th semester BCom courses. So today we are gathered here to witness the Corporate Academia Connect. To begin, I request our 6th semester BBA A section student, Ms. Shalini CG, to welcome the August gathering. Over to you, Shalini.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I am Shalini from 6M BBA A section, here with an opportunity to welcome the August gathering on Corporate Academia Connect on the subject e-business today. E-commerce has extensively matured in the last decade and it continues to grow fast day by day. We are living in exciting times where digital items are becoming smarter and advanced day after day. To rise its toast to such innovations in this sector and for all the e-commerce entrepreneurs who inspire us, the recent outbreak of COVID-19 has dramatically changed the current business climate. Many are being overwhelmed with uncertainty. Unfortunately for some, the future of business looks grim. For stores that have closed their doors, for the time being, they are still viable methods of generating income. Having a reliable e-commerce platform can help to create stable revenue and save your business. E-commerce security is critical for a number of reasons, specifically when it comes to protecting the privacy and sensitive data of customers on a website, safeguarding the finances of an business, preventing fraud and financial scams, and defending the reputation of an online store as a safe place to conduct. Integrity, insight, and inclusiveness are the three essential qualities of a leadership. Quoted by Sadhguru. One such great leader with us today, I wholeheartedly welcome our beloved principal, who is a great leader, motivator, and a best teacher awardee, Dr. Anil Kumar sir, for this webinar.
3.5.
Sir, you are guiding me to all of us. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes. I would like to welcome once again on behalf of RV Educational Institutions, SSMRV College, and on my behalf, the resource person of today's program, Mr. Hari K. Patibanda, who is an expert in the field of e-commerce. And today he is with us to tell us about his experience as an entrepreneur and, of course, worked in different companies in the field of e-commerce. So you will get a practical exposure through him. This is actually, I should appreciate the Department of Management for thinking about having this kind of an initiative called Corporate Academia Connect. This is a very unique initiative wherein we invite people from the industry on the subject wise, on the subject, particular subject. So today we have e-commerce. Similarly, we had a few lectures on banking and other investment banking, etc. So this is a unique initiative to understand the practicality of the subject in the industry. So uh, for students, I think you will get a great opportunity to know how exactly the e-commerce activities takes place in an industry. You may be knowing in the syllabus, you will be knowing only about the theory, but here we will be knowing how exactly it works in the industry. And our intention of doing this Corporate Academia Connect is to invite for all the subjects and prepare a kind of a case study so that will help our students to understand the entire process of the e-commerce depending on the different industry. So today I'm really happy that Dr. Anupama uh, has taken this initiative uh, to organize this particular program, and the HOD of Business Management, Professor Jagadish, and the entire team of BBA and technical team for organizing this unique initiative, initiative in SSMRV College. As you know, SSMRV has been organizing many such programs, maybe more than 60 programs we have organized in the last 3 months for various stakeholders, for uh, uh, for uh, for parents, for students, for corporates, for everybody. We have been organizing many programs. This is another unique program of SSMRV College. That's the reason today we have a very good response, even in the industry and even in the faculty, in the faculty fraternity. The last webinar, I think there were 1,000 participants for our webinar from all 28 states and representing about more than 300 institutions all over India. So that shows the popularity of SSMRV College and the kind of resource persons we invite in our programs. So I'm very proud to say that our college has been ranked among top 5 colleges in India as for India Today, and also we have been accredited by NAC with A grade uh, in the last accreditation cycle. So it is all this is because of the efforts of all our faculty. We have wonderful, eminent, and well qualified faculty members who are responsible for this kind of a development in SSMRV College. So today, I think you have a good opportunity to understand e-business through the eminent speaker, Mr. Hari. And I think it's a great opportunity for all the students to make use of this and learn the practical aspects of e-commerce. All the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Shalini, you can continue.
Thank you. Today we have amidst us an eminent speaker who is helping all of us to understand the concept of e-security in e-commerce as a subject. I wholeheartedly welcome the resource person Sri Hari K. Patibanda, entrepreneur, startup enthusiast, former senior manager, Global PMO, Unilever Corporate Academia Connect. Sir, welcome to you this webinar.
Thank you, Shalini. I hope everyone can hear me clearly.
Yes, thank you. I would like to welcome students, Professor Jagdish Sir, Department of Business Administration, Dr. M.S. Nagar Sir, Department of Commerce, Dr. Shalini N. Ma'am, Coordinator, Second Year BCom, Subject Teachers, Dr. Anupama Ma'am, 6th Semester A and B Sections, Department of Business Administration, Professor Umi Salma Ma'am, Professor Ellappa Sir, 4th Sem BCom A and B Section, heartful welcome to you all. I wholeheartedly welcome the class teachers of 6th Sem A and B sections, Professor Divya Ma'am and Professor Rani Anthony Raj Ma'am from BBA department, and Professor Nandini Ma'am and Dr. Vidya Ma'am, 4th Sem A and B sections, Department of Commerce for the support. Welcome you all. I welcome all faculty members of BCom and BBA for the constant encouragement and support to the webinar. Welcome you all. Very importantly, the student fraternity without whom this program is not fruitful. I wish a red carpet welcome to all BCom 4th Sem and BBA 6th Sem students of A and B section who have joined this webinar. Welcome you all. Hope this webinar will help all of us to understand the conceptual clarity in the subject matter. I request all the students to keep the queries ready to pose after the session. Welcome all once again. I place my sincere thanks to the subject teacher, Dr. Anupama Ma'am, for having organized this webinar and gave this opportunity to me to speak on the occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. Welcome you too to this wonderful session.
Thank you, ma'am.
I now request Ms. Sahana, 6M BBA A section student, to introduce our resource person to the gathering. Over to you, Sahana.
Thank you, Anupama ma'am. I'm Sahana from 6th semester BBA section. Good morning, one and all. I hope everyone are safe and healthy. Hari K. Patibanda is a successful IT professional and entrepreneur with 18 plus years of experience in progressive leadership roles across project portfolio management, IT innovation, change transformation, and risk management. He has a rich international experience in leading cross functional teams to deliver complex programs and transformation initiatives. Sound commercial acumen and proven capability to engage and influence various stakeholders to deliver results. Proven partnership and senior leadership engagement skills in fostering collaboration for getting the job done. Hari sir has skills and expertise in the areas of project program management, portfolio management, business partnering, governance, financial management, IT strategy, BU engagements, risk and assurance, software development, IT delivery and support, business intelligence, talent development, supplier management, change transformation, regional management, and AI machine learning. He is an entrepreneur startup enthusiast, pursued multiple innovative ideas and entrepreneurial opportunities, applying advanced machine learning techniques and developing profitable ideas, which he is presently working on. Harisar has conceptualized development of an application to apply machine learning techniques for analyzing humor-related MRI scans, determine positive negative outcomes, speed up detection, and accuracy integration the AI ML algorithm with the hospital management systems to enable smooth workflow. He has also conceptualized development of a B2B commerce site for farmers, vegetable markets, and cold storage units to create opportunities for selling produce at various markets per demand supply and enhance farmer profits, leverage availability of storage units for storage and distribution to extend life of produce. Apply machine learning techniques to predict demand at various markets. Harisa worked in various roles in corporate across the globe. Naviris Consultancy, a startup firm based in Bangalore, Unilever Singapore and Bangalore as head of IT PMO, core business functions. Unilever is the second largest CPG business in the world, operating in 120 plus countries with an annual income of 50 euros plus billion pounds. Regional Project Manager at APAC and MENA IT Risk and Compliance Office, Singapore. Assistant IT Assurance Team, Genpact, Hyderabad. Harisar is qualified professional in the areas of Artificial Intelligence, Machine Learning, Advanced Certification from IIIT Hyderabad, India. PMP Project Management Professional from PMI USA, CIA Certified Internal Auditor from the IIA USA, CISA Certified Information Systems Auditor from ISACA USA, ITIL Foundation IT Service Management from ISEB UK, BS7799 ISO 27001 Certified Implementer from BSI UK, Chartered Accountancy Intermediate from ICAI India, BSc in Mathematics and Computers from Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning India. Sir, we are very happy to have you today as our resource person. Looking forward to listen and learn from you. Now it's over to you to begin the session. Thank you, our
Um,
beloved
uh,
prince.
yeah, Thank you so much, Sahana, for the wonderful introduction of our resource person. I want to tell one thing before we start the session. The moment we requested him to address students on the topic of webinar, he immediately agreed, keeping aside all his personal engagement, only for the fact that the students should be benefited and he considers students as our nation builders. We at SSMRV College deem it our privilege and our honor to have you with us, sir. We request you to guide our students and be associated with us in the future endeavors as well. Thank you for being with us and a warm welcome to you, Harisa. You can now just start the session.
Thank you, Dr. Nkomo. Thank you, Dr. Anil Kumar, for inviting me to this wonderful session. It's always a pleasure to speak to the students. It's always innovation is actually best seen from the fresh minds. So it's I'm quite happy to be here. Dr. Anupama, I'm not sure I see a. Can you make me a presenter? I don't see that option to present.
1 minute, sir. Vandana, ma'am.
So you can share the screen. I think we have given the access to you.
Okay. Sorry, I don't see that option actually.
We're checking, sir. Just a moment.
Let me switch off my webcam while presenting because it takes a lot of bandwidth. Yeah.
Sure, sir. Not a problem.
Got it. I got it now. Okay. Thank you. Can you see my screen? Can you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
it is
visible.
visible.
Anyone? Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, cool. So security is a very, very critical part of what we do today, right? It's actually an excellent time for us to discuss security. As I'll show you through the slides, there have been several key incidents over the last month, and 2021 has especially been quite scary in terms of the data breaches. And a lot of businesses are basically really emphasizing the security aspect. Now that half of the country, or maybe 3/4 of the country, is working from home due to COVID, they are far more exposed because people are now working outside of the comfort zones from the office. Yeah. Now, this is a quick agenda that I have today. I'll talk of the security threats. This is an interesting topic. It's never constant. It is always evolving. We'll also talk of the importance of policies and procedures. Then we'll talk of the 3 parts of the commerce flow. What are the various security aspects? Again, I'll touch only at a high level. Then we will look at practically how is the security managed. because this is a very interesting aspect. And from my conversation with several folks, people have a very different understanding of how security is managed, but this gives you a good idea of how things are really happening in organizations. And lastly, we look at a couple of interesting case studies where security is a very key aspect of the business model. Okay. Now, I don't know how the Q&A is happening, but if you have any question, please do use the chat Q&A console. I'll pick it up after the end of every section. Okay. So let's start with a very simple business commerce flow. Okay. So there are three components to this. You must be knowing this already. You got the endpoints, which is where the request originates. Then you've got the communication channel, which is the internet. And then you got the service provider or e-commerce side. And this could be anything. And these days, we are seeing a huge number of new and innovative service providers, right from pharmaceuticals to medicine to even testing. Okay. Now, anything that we do on a digital basis, which is nothing but an e-commerce flow, has to contribute, has to adhere to these 6 core principles of security. Right? Again, this is something I'm sure you all know: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authentication, non-repudiation, and privacy. Okay. Now, the privacy part may not be applicable in some cases, but the remaining 5 are essential in almost all the cases. Okay. Now, there's another aspect of e-commerce as well, which is what we call as a business-to-business model. So we've got 5, 6 models: B2B, B2C, C2B, C2C, C2C, B2A, etc. Different kinds of models. But the key point is that the security aspects are fundamentally similar in both the type of commerce. Okay? The big difference is the amount of data that flows through. B2B, in terms of the amount of data that flows through, is considerably small. Okay? When you look at Amazon, for example, Amazon has around 3 billion visitors per month. Okay, 3 billion, that's 3 times India's population. People visit Amazon to do the e-commerce. Flipkart has a much smaller number, but you can imagine the numbers will be pretty high. Now, a B2B does not have that level of volume. Neither does it have that level of transaction. But what this happens is that the businesses stand to be exposed in terms of any weakness in their transaction. So this is a completely different way of seeing e-commerce, but is equally important from a security point of view. Now, this is a quick picture of the key threats. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with most of them. So viruses, I'm going to focus on the ones that are quite prevalent these days. If there's anything that you're not familiar here, you can just ask me. So the most common one these days, which is of incredible amount of focus and attention, and you can see a lot of communication, is phishing. Okay, so phishing is basically a kind of social engineering attack where somebody is asked to compromise some personal information or something related to, say, some piece of information that is relevant for the commerce transaction. This could be your OTP. This could be your order number. There are a whole lot of things, and this happens in a variety of ways. This could be simple email saying, "Hey man, you won 1 crore rupees. Please check on the link to confirm." Or you won an Amazon prize. Please check on this link to confirm. Right? This is a huge nightmare, and as much as we want to prevent this, there is someone or the other who usually falls into this trap. I'll show you some examples of incidents that happened in the last 2 months. This was one of the primary ways where people compromise the networks and compromise the systems. Air India was one such example. Air India, I think, got exposed. About 4.5, 5 million users' data was exposed, including their credit card information and personal information, date of birth, etc. And the primary vector is basically phishing. Okay. Now, the other new development is fundamentally ransomware. This is a very interesting one. Ransomware is basically hijacking your network, your system. Okay. So I've got some screenshots. So basically, the screen gets locked. Fundamentally, what happens is someone would remotely get into the system. So it happens over a month or a couple of weeks or a couple of months. They would prepare. They would prepare for it. They would make sure that all the data in your system is ready to be encrypted. And one fine day, they will, issue a remote command that basically says your system has been locked. This is a real screenshot, right? WannaCry is the first one. They did this in 2017. There are variants of it. The most recent attack is just weeks old. It's called Colonial Pipeline in the US, where the price of gasoline has increased tremendously, right? And you can see the timeline. Now, this is a personal laptop of someone. That's why it's only $300. But for corporations, so Canon camera got hacked. They asked for $50 million. Colonial Pipeline was asked to pay 20 million. They ended up paying 11 million. An interesting thing is they have a customer support. Basically, you can call a customer help desk and negotiate the amount. So it's become pretty sophisticated the way the security, the hacks have come these days. Okay. Now, this is the main ones. So site weaknesses is a bit rare these days, but basically someone will add some code to the website through your browser and exploit the website. Again, this is very hard for the end user to know. But on the server side, we can actually figure this out. Denial of service is basically giving so many fake requests that the business is unable to transact, basically. So this is very uncommon. This only happens to large websites. But in India, we have had a couple of incidents, mostly on governance services. But private businesses have now found a way to overcome this denial of service. Okay. Now, spoofing and fake websites is something we all need to be very cautious. So when we type ICICI Bank in the browser, you can essentially end up into a first website by nature, but that could not be ICICI Bank. It could be some other website where you enter your password and login details twice, and it says my login failed, please re-enter. And on the third attempt, after capturing your details, it will redirect you to the right site. And again, you enter, and you probably will not miss anything because all of this happens in seconds. Okay. Now, the most important part is there's consequences of this breach. Okay. Now, for an organizational point of view, reputational damage is huge. There are a couple of companies. The biggest one is called Telefonica. It's a Spanish telecom. It basically had to shut down because of the massive data hack and loss of reputation. People lost trust in the business. Then there are also legal penalties and financial losses. But from an individual point of view, data theft is a big concern. Okay. Now, have you ever been involved in a data breach? How do you know? Okay. So I'm going to show you a website which can you see this web page?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can enter your details basically, like my email here, and it basically shows you how many websites have been compromised. Now this is only showing you the data that is in public domain. Okay. So this particular email ID of mine has been involved in 7 major breaches. Okay. And you can see Domino's, which is just in 2 months ago. Yeah, we eat a lot of pizza basically, but essentially what it means is that a lot of my personal information has been compromised. Now, all of these are essentially e-commerce websites. Okay. Now, there's another way to know that as well. Now, Chrome offers this inbuilt facility. So if you are there, you can look at this passwords, and you can see the check passwords here. Right now, I have over 64 compromised passwords and 185 weak passwords. So all of these websites have essentially been hacked. Basically, the data of user information has been compromised. Right? It's such a huge number, and when I first saw that, it was a shock. I changed most of the passwords, but I don't use Chrome anymore to track them. So it shows that. But fundamentally, you can see the amount of data theft that happens, and how it happens is very silent in the background. Yeah, we may not even realize that essentially.
Sir, you mean to say that even in our accounts also the same thing we can see, right?
Yes, so both have a been pawned and Chrome check passwords is available to all of you. You can check it right now in your browsers as well.
Okay, okay.
Okay, the list goes on and on and on and on, and the first time we see it is a literal shock. But again, what Chrome does is sometimes it forces you to change password. But again, the strength of the action is really on the user, right? It's not on the website. If you know something has been breached and you've not changed it, it's entirely up to you. So I've changed all the password, but it's just that the Chrome database which stores the password has not been updated. Okay. Now, there's another small part. When I said that this particular channel is unprotected, the middle part here is unprotected, basically the communication channel. What I meant was that this is basically your internet cable. If you're using Airtel, if you're using Hathway, if you're using Tata or Jio, from the time the cable leaves your modem to the time it reaches the website, it has to follow a lot of cable. It has to go to the wireless. Now that part you cannot do anything. It's out of your control. It's out of the service provider like Amazon's control. So if you transmit a data that's essentially unprotected, right? Let me just go. If you transmit any data that's unprotected at both the ends, then the entire channel is unprotected. Okay. Now, why is this important? Now, Indian Railways offers free Wi-Fi in many railway stations. You get free Wi-Fi in airports. You get free Wi-Fi in Starbucks. You get free Wi-Fi in Coffee Day, right? All of these web places, if you browse your internet, you need to make sure, there are some tips which I'll show you, but you need to make sure that your data is not compromised. Will you know if it is compromised? You will not know until something really happens. Somebody skims your credit card, somebody uses your account for fraudulent means. You may not really know it. Okay, so this is very important. Okay. Now, the thing with security, it's like if you live in a gated community, or if you're in your university, or if you're in office, security is fundamentally preventative. Okay, it's preventive. This is where the maximum effort happens. You don't want anything to happen to you, to your data, to your hardware, to your mobile phone, right? And this is where the biggest amount of effort happens. So essentially 80% of the spend in organization on security is in preventive controls. Okay. Then there are some detective controls. I'll show you some. There are very few of them actually, but this is mostly in audit and reviews. And corrective controls you can never predict. There are companies which spend days together just trying to fix an issue, months together trying to fix an issue. So we cannot really predict, and nobody wants to be in the situation, right? I've been involved in a couple of incidents. It's when I joined an organization in Genpact in Hyderabad, there was a virus incident, and I'll explain to you in a minute when we come to that section. But again, now the important point is security is invisible to you. Now this particular presentation, this particular video call is also secure, right? But you don't see it. Now I'll show you a bit of how to be careful. And when you're also browsing an e-commerce site, not just you, even of any business, I'll also tell you about what are the key things they do, right? And when we are doing our own startup, this is an extremely important part. Our clients trust us only fundamentally, firstly, if securities are given. If there is no security, if the guy visits our website or our services, he doesn't see security is done, we don't get the business. Okay. Now, the first part, very basic. I don't want to spend too much time, but any questions so far on this?
Dear students, any questions you can ask now. You can go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the most important things is policies and procedures. Okay. Now, I initially put this towards the end, and just a few minutes before the session, I put it in the front. When we initiate a startup, it's my third startup. The first thing we always start with is a risk assessment. We say, you know what, we are doing this line of business, we are doing an insurance website. We expect our clients to share a lot of personal data. And what are the key risks that could be involved? And accordingly, we have to create some kind of policy to say, okay, we've got a website, we've got a database, we got a payment gateway, we got an upload functionality, we got data storage. What are the things we want to do? That is what we call as a security policy. Okay? And then we start to implement it. Now, there is a cost to this. Security is not cheap. The more private information you have, the more individually identifiable information you have. This gets pretty expensive, so we have to balance. And once we implement this to a certain extent, again, we do this in waves. We implement the basic controls at the beginning, and then we start to implement some of the more sophisticated ones once we start getting clients. And then once we launch, and then there's a regular review that happens. This review can be incident based, or whenever there's a big change in the system, we end up reviewing this. So this is one of the most important parts, and this starts before we start the business. Okay, I will not tell you what policy procedures are. I'm sure you understand them. And these are some of the core policies. One of my roles in Unilever in Singapore was to review this. This is an annual exercise where the head of the function in the region, the CIO for the Asia Pacific, he had to sign this document called policy assurance that policies have been reviewed and they're functioning satisfactorily. So this is a big piece of work. Now, when we do the startups, again, this is what I just said. This is a day one activity, right? This is never in the last, or this is not when the need arises. There have been startups which have lost data right from day one, but this is the first thing we do. We have to look at, so when we start building an application, we have to look at the risk. What kind of data are we handling? Okay. Is it every important personal data? Is it like, am I holding individual identifiable data? Am I holding credit card information? So all of that depends on how the controls will be built. Then the second part is we need to inform our employees, not just in a startup, in any organization. People are considered to be often the weakest point of security. Phishing, for example, targets employees, right? So this is where we have deployed several methods. We have physical sessions where we talk to people. We have regular webinars. We even have them sign a document saying that I have read and understood all the policies. I hereby abide to follow the policies, and here is my signature, right? And if someone doesn't sign it, or if someone signs it and violates a policy, it's a cause for disciplinary action, right? Then there's something called as access the controls. This is where, like, if you take the payroll information, how much salary each employee is getting, very few people in the organization actually get to see that information. So this is called a role-based access control. Yeah. Now this is a very advanced topic. This is a topic entirely by itself. But again, this is something that needs to be done, and this is done almost on a regular basis. Internal audit, which reviews this, or external audit reviews this, is a key starting point. If the access controls are not well defined, then you essentially have a weakness in the security straight away, right? So this is a key point. And wherever I work, there was a dedicated team from the external audit and internal audit who review these things. It's very, very sensitive. And last is data encryption. We will talk about this in a couple of slides. This is actually a very, very important topic. I have a couple of more detailed slides on this, so we'll talk about that. Yeah. Now, so far, am I okay with the pace? Are you able to follow me?
Can we have that policy, the different policies that you were mentioning in the earlier IAS? So just give a light on these policies, how each policy has its own importance.
Okay, sure. So what I've listed is actually the top policies from an end user point of view, or basically. So there is something fundamentally called as an information security policy. Now, this is basically the most important aspect of an organization is its intellectual property, right? Fundamentally, if you look at all of the hacking attempts, they're basically going at their biggest asset, which is nothing but information. Now, this information could be your customers' information. If you're an engineering company, it could be engineering designs. If you are a military company, it could be your, if you're a defense organization, it could be your weapon designs, etc. If you are Swiggy, if you're Flipkart, there could be any number of credit card. That is a primary part. So the information security policy covers a bit of all of these things, right? It basically says, firstly, what is an acceptable use? Can you browse internet in your office? Can you watch YouTube in the office? Can you go to sites which are basically selling pirated software, or can you go to pirated websites in the office, right? Or there are a lot of rules and regulations here. Can you access Facebook in the office? So this acceptable use policy defines such conditions. And organizations have several tools at their disposal to measure, to monitor this. And the strength of measurement or strength of monitoring really depends on organization. So for a consumer goods company or from a retail company, our acceptable use is pretty broad. We have no restrictions on the kind of usage that we have. But when I was in Genpact, there was no access to internet. There was no access to Facebook. There was no access to YouTube, because it's a back office. There's a whole lot of customer information that's been handled. There's a whole lot of controls around this. Similarly, the email communications policy determines what you can actually use the email for. Right? Again, if you're a BPO or a back office, then you got restrictions on using this for personal information. You cannot use it for personal. You cannot give it for banks, for Flipkart, for Amazons. You can't use any of that. So there's a number of restrictions around this. Because the more you publicize it, for example, almost all organizations mandate that you cannot use your email for communicating to forums like Reddit, right? You can't use this in a public forum, or you can't use it for giving comments on, say, Times of India or Amazon or any website, for example. Then you got the access control policy, which is what I just mentioned. It's about role-based access control. This just gives you highlight, and fundamentally the policy says you should not be attempting to access something that you don't need. And if you need it, you should rightly approach the information owner. So every piece of information in the organization has an owner. You should approach that owner. This actually is a process basically that says how should you get access. Mobile device usage policy is a pretty new thing. If you take Infosys, for example, again, it's very close to you guys. Infosys has 260,000 employees, right? And almost all of them get access to emails and other stuff on their mobile devices. Okay? Which means mobile is also another point of attack or entry for viruses, for phishing, for anyone who wants to compromise mobile is a real attack point. So there's a lot of guidelines about how this happens. Usually you have to install a software called AirWatch, which locks your system, your mobile phone down. You can't root it, for example, you can't sideload apps. Then there is a business continuity policy. This is a very interesting one. Right now, COVID, a whole lot of businesses have activated this business continuity policy. It basically says, in case something happens, some untoward incident happens, how are you going to keep the business running? Right now, the business continuity policy will say work from home, or isolate your key resources, provide them secure environment. Now, even during this COVID time, during the lockdown, there will be some people who will be required to go to the office. Like you have to maintain your email, you have to maintain your servers, right? You have to monitor antivirus. So this policy basically gives you that guideline. How are you going to continue the business in case of a major incident? Now, I've been involved in developing an avian flu BCP in Singapore in 2008 or 2009. Singapore is a very small country; it's a city country. When the avian flu hit, it was a pretty big. It's a far more potent, potent in the sense of casualties than COVID, but it's far less virulent. It doesn't spread as much as COVID. So we had to activate the business continuity policy. There were a lot of guidelines about it. And the last is the incident response policy. This is basically what happens if something happens, right? What happens if your Personal information is compromised. You get an email. What happens if someone hacks the organizational network? What happens if there's a fire outside your building? What happens? When I was in Genpact, we received a bomb threat one day in Hyderabad, in the Uppal campus. Then the incident response team immediately gets into play. We get evacuate. Somebody measures how many, you have your ID card. Somebody measures how many people have checked in with the ID card and how many have checked out with the ID card. There's someone physically counting. So all of that is an incident response. It's nobody wants to be doing this, but this is very important. You have to prepare for an incident. You can't just document something and keep it open, right? Now, any questions so far? I think we'll move to the client-side security. I'm sure you have policies and procedures of how to use your network and internet in your university as well, and this is nothing different.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Now, this is a very easy one. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but basically client or endpoints, right? Endpoints are basically your laptops, your mobile phones, your Alexa devices, your IoT devices, anything that communicates to the internet from your personal capacity is an endpoint device, right? Now, this is where most of the incidents happen, but the cost of it is not well known because many of us don't come out. And if someone hacks our network or if we get a virus, we don't report to anybody. We just find ways to clean it. We delete our data as well. The fundamental thing is just make sure that you have an antivirus suite. At a minimum, this is important. Okay. And the big takeaway is it's all about responsible behaviors. We may not know it, but you may inadvertently also result in compromising a big e-commerce site or a big organizational site. You may not know it. It happens. It may be happening right now from my laptop for all I know. Okay, but we wouldn't know it. That's how some of the denial of service, for example, happens like that. Somebody will install a small file, maybe less than 100 KB. Okay, in a 200 Mbps connection or a 100 Mbps connection, it's a microsecond for it to download. And they would use that to remotely call the program. And what happens? It keeps on sending messages to one single website, which you just call a denial of service. Now, the only way we can prevent it is make sure you have a good antivirus suite and make sure you have some responsible behaviors. I'll not go through that in detail here. This is all common sense stuff. Okay. Now, this is one of the most important aspects of internet. Okay? This is the minute you talk of security, this is the most important part. And cryptography. Okay, it's basically very simple. It's basically when you use the word hello, you apply certain mathematical formula and convert this into a different model, different text. Okay. Now, if you're using the same model to decrypt it, we call it a symmetric encryption. But symmetric encryption is primarily used in our own desktops, like to encrypt a Word document, to protect a Word document, to protect a zip file. But when you talk of internet, we talk of these primarily SSL is a big one, which in fact is a major one. And SSL is prevalent everywhere. As some of the case studies I show you, SSL is a backbone for security. Okay? There's also about email security and digital signatures. Then if you're a company like bank or e-commerce website where you hold personal information, or you're a hospital or healthcare, you have to encrypt your database. And these are all the data cryptography methods. And each of them has their own version. So there are thousands of such cryptography methods. Basically, if you're in India, for example, and if you're a bank, you have to encrypt some of the customer databases. And you follow the government guidelines. Governments have certain guidelines about the kind of cryptography you want to use. You don't know, no government allows you to use encryption that they cannot, decrypt. That's very important from us. Safety of the nation, right? Imagine someone who wants to, a terrorist who wants to use it. You don't want them to use encryption that the government cannot understand what's happening. Now, this is an extremely important slide. This is what is the foundation of the internet. Actually, modern internet, this is the foundation. I'll show you how this works. This is basically called asymmetric key encryption, which means use one key to encrypt and use another key to decrypt. Okay. Now this is quite important for you to understand because you may be doing you are doing this on a daily basis. The minute you log into your website to the bank, the minute you order from Swiggy or Zomato, the minute you order anything from Amazon, Flipkart, or you book a railway ticket, you're using this. Okay, this is very, very important to do. As it says, there are two keys. There's a public key, which is in a public database directory. Anybody can get it from there. And there's a private key. Private key is confidential. Okay, the provider will use the private key to share the information. So the first thing is a public key. When you log into a website, the public key is used to encrypt the data, like Amazon, for example. Then when you get the information, the private key is used to decrypt, right? Then the private key, again, now you've seen the Amazon website. Now you want to place an order, okay? Then the private key basically digitally signs it. Okay, which means that whatever you're ordering from that time is when you're exchanging the data, and that's where this whole thing happens. The digital encryption starts. Then the server actually verifies the signature. Then the private key says, this is Hari Krishna. He's the guy who's using this, and my public key verifies that information. Okay? All of this happens in less than a thousandth of a second. Okay. Now I'll show you in reality how this happens, and this is one of the most important things we do in a startup. The first thing we do in a startup is buy an SSL certificate, and we make this happen. Now this is a foundation for digital transactions. It's mandatory. It's legally mandatory in almost all countries, and anything we do in terms of business, it basically is a foundation of SSL, like a VPN, credit card security, banking, etc. Now this is what we call a secure sockets layer. This is a practical implementation of it. Just go read through. It's very easy to understand, and I'll show you how this happens right now. We have to buy this SSL key. There are a certain number of website providers like OpenSSL, GoDaddy, and all. They sell this encryption key. If you want to set up an own personal website, you want to sell any kind of service, you have to basically buy the key. Some keys cost $20. Some of the most advanced security keys cost you maybe $500, $1,000. There's some physical verification. Someone will physically call you. They'll verify your company financial records. This is a big process. You can decide how much level of security you want. Okay. Let me show you how this works. Okay. So let me just go to Amazon.in. Okay. Now let me just go to another website which I have not been. Okay, let me go to Fab Furnish. I don't know if India is there. It's still there. Okay. Now this is a website that I have not visited ever before. Okay. Now first thing you need to say is there a padlock in the corner? Okay. Now the padlock basically tells you that this has security in there. This is an SSL based security. And then you can actually look at the certificate. The certificate says it's valid from May 18th to August 17th this year. Just 1 year, couple of months. And it's issued by an authorized certificate called DigiCert. Okay. And the objective of it proves your identity to your remote computer, which is to the website e-commerce provider. And it also ensures the identity of the e-commerce provider, in this case, Fab India. Right? And now we go to the issuer statement. The issuer statement is the person, the DigiCert. They have the details here. You don't need to read it basically, but it's more information. Now, what is the key looking like? Okay, so this is using the SHA-256 algorithm. I showed you a couple of algorithms. This is one of them, and this is the public key. This is not a very strong key. This is a 256-bit key. Okay, so you can see this is the actual key. You can see the small numbers. I know it's small, but you can actually do this in your own computer. Now, if I go to Amazon and do this, right, you can see that's a 256-bit key, whereas Amazon uses a much robust one, right? So this is I'm just going to copy this.
Then how safe is it, sir? No, when they use only very less bits.
Now, by and large, any kind of encryption is safe, but the larger the key strength, the better the security. That's the fundamental aspect. Uh, Again, there are some restrictions. I don't know if so. In India, they cannot use cryptography beyond a certain level, right? I don't know if you can use 2048 in India. So this Amazon certificate is issued to all Amazon. Basically, it's just not issued to Amazon India. All Amazon websites have this. So you can see. Let me show you this. Some place it says that. Uh, So this you can actually see the key. So this okay, this is the India specific key. So but yeah, the generally the more secure, the stronger, the more secure it is. And so Amazon and all again, as I said, is 3 billion users right per month, compared to Fab India, which is what maybe 1 million users. Probably it could be far less, right? So there is a certain amount of cost they can take, and the bigger the security key, the more the costly it is. The other thing is encryption is really dependent on the server power, right? It's your Intel i3 versus Intel i9 or Intel i10. Now, the more stronger encryption you use, the more stronger processor you have. And you're talking about a small company, the cost of servers will be too high if you use really high-end encryption. So all of that plays into a big factor. It's one of the challenges we had in our startup as well. When we're using machine learning and security, we needed really high-end server, which cost almost $600 a month. But we didn't have that level of budget. So we ended up using a startup innovator accelerator program, which gave us some funding. Okay. Now I'll show you this in another browser. This is Mozilla as well. Mozilla does a better job in sharing this. So again, so if you look at this, we have these two icons. The first icon basically says, is this website tracking anything on your website, on you? Okay. So I'm allowing certain tracking, and all of these are advertisements. But then there are no Facebook trackers, there's no fingerprinters, there's no crypto miner. It's a different topic, crypto miner, but there's no cross-site tracking cookies. Facebook is notorious for this. If I go to Facebook, you'll see several of this enabled. Okay, and again, it shows you the padlock, and it kind of shows you who's provided, etc. You can go down in details. Now there are websites which don't have this information. Like this is an interesting example. ICRISAT, this is a parent organization of ICRISAT, which is a United Nations funded rice research institute. This is not secure. This website is not secure. They have not enabled secure SSL. Okay? So if you are going to share any personal information on this, you have to be really cautious. But my knowledge, this is not really an information sharing site. This is more an information gathering site. This is more to understand what is it doing, what is the United Nations doing, what is the Food and Agricultural Organization doing. Okay. The other one is a university website. This is a real surprise to me. This is a Washington University. Why does a Washington University does not have SSL is baffling to me. Okay, because there will be section where you're going to log in, right? You're going to log in at some point to access your library. You're going to access your professor directory. You're going to access your student directories, right? Now you can see there is still not secure. This is not secure. So if I'm sending a person, let's say Alan somebody, okay, and if I'm in a railway station or somewhere, anyone who's sniffing my data can actually see all this information. Right? He knows I'm searching for Alan. Right? This is a bit baffling. Again, why they did it, I don't know. I don't even know if this is a genuine university. And you see, the first question is this a genuine university in the first place? Right? That's the kind of questions that would have worked. So when if you're looking to go abroad or some point, you want to pursue higher studies, you need to take care. You look at this stuff. Most university, for example, if I look at Cornell University, right, you can already see the S here. Okay, you can see it's secure. Right? Now, why the other university doesn't have? Now, I have my fundamental question. It could be one of those. I don't know. Maybe it's a scam university. Maybe it's a genuine university. Maybe the certificate expired. There's something that always happens. But this is a very important part to do. Whenever you're browsing, you're browsing the internet, if you are sharing any information at all, if you're going to, even if you use your contact form, make sure that the SSL is this is enabled. If not, you really look at the need. If it is really necessary, then you perform a self-risk assessment and then try to share the data. Okay. Now IRCTC is another one. The same is a secure site. Okay? So this is quite an important part to check when you are browsing the internet. Okay. So any questions so far on this SSL point? If there are no questions, means either I'm very good or I'm completely opposite.
Sir, I think we have one student has raised hand, Varsha. Varsha, do you have any questions? Miss Varsha?
Is the chat open to everyone or is it?
It is open to everyone.
Okay. Or anyone, you can just type your question in the chat as well if you're not comfortable using the audio. In fact, that's easier for me to read as well and understand your question.
Yes, I think we have been discussing the concepts in the classes, so sure that they might be definitely able to raise some questions. I request all the students, if you have any questions, please raise here. Make sure that you are clearing your doubts here. So that is the main purpose of organizing this webinar today. So you can just raise questions, or else definitely I have a question to ask.
Please go ahead, Doctor.
Yes, sir. As you said, this SSL certificate. As you said, that certificate would have lapsed. So how often you have to renew your certificate as such?
Okay, good question. So let me just go to. So GoDaddy is a very popular certificate one, and then Komodo is another very popular one. So when you're buying an SSL certificate, there is a concept of how long you want to buy. Okay, you can buy it every couple of years. You can buy. I think there is the multi-year certificate you can buy. So the maximum you can buy is 5 years. Okay, so in reality, it's up to you to buy. You want to buy. When we did our startup, we buy for 1 year, because as we develop our startup, we actually may have to do subdomains. We may have to do multiple websites. So the first one, for example, is a single website, www.com, mysite.com. It'll only allow for that. If you have www.client1.mysite.com, then this will not work. Okay. So all of them are different. Depends on how much you want to pay for the wildcard certificate, etc. Wildcard allows unlimited domains. Now, this is only first year pricing. Multi-year pricing will be pretty high. This is all per year. From second year, it's $249, $250. So there's a whole lot of mathematics and finance that we need to review before you decide how long you want to keep it. Does it help? Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to the presentation there. Now the security on the business side is an incredibly complex topic. Okay. There are people. My previous boss is now from Genpact. I think he's now the Chief Information Security Officer for Norton Symantec for Asia Pacific. And he still has a full job. He's a security expert. He speaks in all the big conferences, and it's still too much for him to even know. There's so much of security aspects in this. So when you really look at the key components, this is a very high level view. This is like a 50,000 feet view. And you go down, the amount of complexity increases exponentially. Okay. Now this is something that so at a basic level, you have this component. You have the network security, which is nothing but the firewalls, IDS, intrusion detection systems, etc. Then you got the endpoint security, which we discussed. This is the end user point of view. Then you have the channel security, which is nothing but your internet security. If you're using cloud or if you're using wireless, there's three parts to it. Now, Doctor, is this something that you want me to cover in detail? Because I have not covered what is a firewall or an IDS. Uh, I'm just directly assuming people have some basic knowledge of what a firewall or IDS is.
They have some basic knowledge about that firewall and all, but maybe we would have not touched that cloud security and all. If you go back to the last slide, yes, that cloud security, how it happens, and we have just touched upon how firewall works. I think the students can definitely ask. If you want to, have the enhanced version on this to be told. Students, please just give me some inputs in the chat box so that we can just go ahead. Otherwise, there is a cloud security, there is a wireless security. I think these people don't know, sir.
Okay. Now, I've not covered these today, but I'll briefly mention it. Wireless security is pretty easy. It's basically the same public key encryption that we discussed, so there's not much to talk about that. Cloud security is an entirely different topic altogether. It works very, very differently. I'll just show you a couple of pictures, I think, because I've not covered this. So when you talk of the network security, this is what is called as a typical security architecture. Okay. Now this is a very simple diagram. Essentially, in the organization, you have this. These are real pictures. We have these pictures, and these pictures are highly sensitive, which means that you will never see them. These are all need-based. You don't get to see them unless there is a real need for someone to access these pictures. Okay. Now, if we really look at the flow, right? If you this is the internet, and the internet, there's a first level of protection is always what is called as a firewall. Okay, it's a rule-based system that allows certain traffic to get in, the legitimate traffic to go in, and the illegitimate traffic it just rejects. Okay, there's a basic concept of a firewall, and firewalls are put at the points of entry. Now, if you're the Airtel internet that's coming into the office, the business network office, then first thing you do is put a firewall. Okay? Now, organizations have hundreds of firewalls. Okay, the numbers, it's very difficult to explain how many numbers they have. If you're looking at the Infosys and all, they could have maybe 300-400 firewalls. It really depends on the number of servers. And now this is again a simplistic server, but typical organization, if you're talking of a Fortune 1000 company, they'll have thousands of servers, thousands. So just to give you a scale, Google has about 2 million servers. Okay, Google search engine itself runs on around 450,000 servers, just the search engine. Okay, now you can imagine the level of complexity this picture could be. Amazon itself is known to have close to 600,000 servers. But the thing with e-commerce websites is none of them kind of share any information of how many servers are, because it's pretty sensitive, right? Now, when we look at a customer coming in, I'm looking at the top left corner. The customer would usually, the first level of protection is in the antivirus, then using SSL. These are port numbers, don't worry about them. He will try to contact the public web server. In this case, it's IRCTC, let's say. Right? So IRCTC will have a public web server before a firewall before the server. Now this firewall, if you're in a cloud, the cloud provider provides you with a rudimentary firewall. If you're in Amazon cloud or Google cloud, there's a web login where you can log in and you can configure your basic firewall. Okay. Now this is the first level. Now, if you are accessing a website, it's basically on a public web server. Okay. Now, there is no picture here, but essentially there will be a dotted line around the pink box. Whatever I mentioned here, this pink box will usually be separate from the organization. Okay, they will be outside the organization. Public servers are not within the organizational network. They are usually outside the organizational network. This is also called as demilitarized zone. So web servers generally end up in the demilitarized zone. Okay, now the ports here that is allowed is 8443. 8443 means this website is only allowing access to your browser. You can't access it in any other mechanism. You can't access it from, say, FTP. You can't access it, say, from an email account. You can access it from SSL or Telnet, for example. There are different means of accessing. Okay, this is the first level. Similarly, then there's another firewall from the external DMZ to the internal organizational network. Okay. Now let me just take a minute here to put a box there just to show. So if I'm here, so this would be another private network. Okay. Let me just. So this would be a private. This would be a network, and the public server would be outside this network. This is a very important way of segregating networks. So when the web server is compromised, which is usually the first case, because a denial of service always happens at the public web server, then you protect your internet network, because your core IP, the core data, the databases that support Amazon, Flipkart, or IRCTC, the ticketing systems, all of them are inside the protected zone. Okay. Now this may sound complex, but it just gives you an idea of how the organization's network security or security is defined. Okay. Now there's an internal user within the network. He is inside the firewall basically, and he'll also access different servers. There's internal web server where your first point of access. Application servers are nothing but your finance, your payroll, your employee systems, your print servers, your file servers. If you're using supply chain, sales, marketing, all of these are called application servers. So an internal user is within the protected zone. Okay. Now then there are various switches, which is switches are nothing but routers, and then there is another layer of protection for database server. Right? This is really dependent on the kind of organization. If you're an IRCTC or Amazon, Flipkart, insurance company, bank, then you have to enable a level of encryption. I think most of the regulations require it. And then you have your core processor. Now this is a distributed architecture, as we call it. You don't have essentially everything in the same box. Everything is separated, right? And everything has a level of security. Now, if there is a user, like if you're a bank and you got an SBI, then there's another level of protection. There's a branch in SBI or Corporation Bank or ICICI Bank. The branch systems connect to the branch head office via VPN. VPN is another form of SSL implementation. Okay, and then they connect it to your internal network via the switch. Now, depending on the use case, many companies restrict the level of application access from the VPN. Some may give it all, some may restrict it. It really is on the organization. There are several rules to it. Okay. Now, this is a very high-level architecture picture. This can get very, very complex. Some of the organizations I worked had anywhere from 50 to about 200 firewalls. Okay. At a firewall, you also have the intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. Now, for us, from an end user point of view, the minute you go to Amazon.com, nothing happens. You don't see any firewall. You don't see any IPS IDS. You don't see any antivirus. Okay, because all of this happens in microseconds. All of this happens in microseconds, right? Now, this is a SHTTP or secure HTTP connection, which means it is using the port 80 and 443, right? Now, all of this is microseconds, but it is there, right? It's a fundamental aspect of security. This is why we call security as an invisible hand. It's there always, right? And that's also a merit. It's also a demerit, because spoof websites, fake websites can actually fool you into thinking that there is a security aspect, but they may not be there. Okay. Now, let me just briefly touch upon cloud security before we go to the next slide. Cloud security is nothing but, let me show you a cloud website. Now, Amazon Web Services is the biggest cloud provider in the world right now. The other two big ones are Google and Microsoft. Okay. So what do we mean by cloud? It means your server is basically residing on the internet. It's not residing within your premises. Like for example, I don't know if your university is using cloud, but many organizations kind of run their uh, application servers internally within the organization. Like in this case, you see the application server is within the organizational network. But these days, many companies are moving this application outside to a cloud. In this case here, it's on the internet here. Right? The advantage, firstly, is cost. Now, internal server may cost setting up a server. So, buying a server is usually anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to some servers like HANA servers will cost you close to $1 million. Okay, so they're very costly, right? And if you're buying 1,000 servers, you're essentially looking at a 100 million budget just for servers. Now, it's very rare to buy 1,000 servers in a year. You usually buy them over a period. And then there's a concept of data center security. There's a concept of resources. Then there's a concept of maintenance, application patching, whole different ballgame altogether. So they put this server on the internet, and what you do is you pay as you go. Now, very few servers which you really need all the time, like finance, payroll, you really need all the time. The many servers which you'd only need on a need basis, which means if I need that server, I'll essentially run it and shut it down, like a machine learning server. Most machine learning servers are not full-time because machine learning requires a really ultra sophisticated high performance server. Okay, so let me show you this AWS GPU servers. Okay. So this is different kinds of servers, and you will see GPU servers is a pretty costly affair. Okay, this page does not have that, but essentially GPU servers, for example, we call are very costly. You can see it says $24 per hour, which for me is pretty cheap. But essentially, if I let me just give me a second because this will tell you how we make decisions in an organization. Everything is really dependent on the budget, right? So some of this is at $5.52 per hour. Now, if you really consider that into 24 hours and full year, it's really massive. Okay. And then there are different kinds of servers, and server is not the only thing you have to buy. You really have to buy database server, you have to buy another application server. There's a whole lot of budget in this. That's the reason why organizations try to balance their budget with cost, okay? Because operations are costly to run. So when we talk of cloud, this is the fundamental principle. You can run your operations more efficiently and financially beneficial. Because IT is a sunk cost, you keep sinking the cost into it. Okay. Now, that's when you talk of cloud security, these are the key aspects. The first thing is called the identity management, which is how are people going to access. It's a very big topic by itself. The remaining is essentially the same that we discussed: firewall, data encryption, threat intelligence, IDS, IPS. Cloud security gateway is what I just mentioned to you, that Amazon itself provides some kind of security model. Okay. Now I think we're running short of time, so I'll try to speed up a bit. Now this is a very, very important part. Again, it's a lot to tell. Basically, every software comes with certain weaknesses. It's called vulnerabilities. And every vulnerability is coded. Basically, you can see the numbers. CVE stands for common vulnerability and exposures. And what happens is someone will try to take advantage of that vulnerability to hack into your system. The most dangerous of these are called zero day, which means the hack is readily exploitable. Okay. Now, this is a report from Qualys, which is one of the biggest security companies, which actually identifies your vulnerabilities. The other part is actually a penetration testing, which is basically you employ real hackers. They're called white hat hackers. You employ them to actually try to exploit your system. So vulnerability is only identification of weaknesses. After you do the vulnerability testing, you remediate, which means you fill the gaps. Then you essentially get a penetration testing done. Okay, penetration testing is essentially unlimited by scope. They can use social engineering, they can use phishing, they can use any kind of things, and it's an expensive affair. So people don't generally get it done much. Once in a quarter, maybe once in a half year, or maybe after a security incident. So this report is extremely sensitive. I've 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 never seen a penetration testing report, but we have had an incident in our previous organization where some of the servers were compromised. Basically, it's a public server, so data it was compromised, and it got the attention of regulatory authorities of that country. It was not India, by the way. It was not Singapore as well, but it got the attention of the regulatory authorities in the country. So we had to first shut down the website straight away, and then remediate it, and then before we site is open to the public, this had to be done. And believe me, it was shocking. It was shocking. It kind of said, how could you even get this thing up in the public without knowing that there's so many weaknesses? Okay. Now these are some of the recent incidents. You can see the dates. All of them are this year. Domino's was the latest, uh, uh, which is why I don't use credit card at all on many of the e-commerce sites. I use UPI unless it's a big one. But this Air India was the biggest one just last month. 20 to 4.5 million passengers. The attack happened on Sita, which is an international database for travelers. That happened. Uh, Again, just information to read. We'll quickly talk about how is security managed. Security is basically, there's so many components of security. Now, nobody sits and monitors them individually. Okay? The basically event log tools, these are basically huge dashboards. Like, I don't know if you've seen the PMO India Prime Minister's Office dashboards, a huge number of dashboards. So security is nothing just like that. It's exactly the same. It's basically a measurement of how all the trends are done. And there's a huge team that monitors that. So this is a real example of one. These are the dashboards. I'll also show you some screens of how this is seen. So this is a screenshot of a company called SolarWinds. If you just Google SolarWinds, you'll be shocked because hackers have now become so smart that they actually have hacked the monitoring tool, and they compromised almost 5,000 federal government agencies in the US. It's one of the biggest hacks ever on the planet till date. Okay. Now this is, you can see this is a firewall rule. This basically shows this particular screen, user logon by user, how many times an administrator has logged in. I mean, administrators shouldn't be logging to the system so often. Then what are the firewall events? You can see the port traffic in this case. This is by traffic by district. 80 and 443 are the maximum ones. That's where this is getting the traffic. How many logon failures? This is also another kind of dashboard. This is an even more comprehensive one. I've seen this many times. I was part of the internal control risk management team. So this screenshot is something that we take regularly, and all the red ones here we essentially audit. It's failing. We look at how long has been they are reporting failing. Okay, and this is another dashboard of antivirus. And when an antivirus wreaks havoc in the network, I've been there a couple of times. Luckily, I'm not one of those who fixes it. It's nothing short of panic. Your network gets clogged. The email to the person to the next sitting next to you will take almost a day, 2 days. If it's an immediate, you can say, please release payment to the vendor for services. If not, if you don't release the payment today, there will be a 3% penalty. That email will never reach. You never know it reached. So this is another way of monitoring it. Almost all companies usually have this. Depending on the size of the company, it could be someone at one desk, or it could be something like this. Now, this is a security operations center. This is a Dell Asia Pacific network security operations center. The one in Genpact where I was part of the security operations team there in the internal controls team. This is a 30-seater. The one in Genpact where I worked was a 50-seater. So you usually have all these kinds of screens, and somebody does real-time monitoring. And there are basically 3 levels of support. The first one are people who fix it. The second ones are who try to address the root cause. The third one are experts. So the first level of support will be hundreds. The second one will be like 30, 40. The third one will usually be 2 to 3 people because they're really premium people. Okay. And this is an industrial grade security security operations center. You can see this in banks. I had a friend in Singapore who worked for a very large multinational bank, and they had something like this. Access is extremely limited. Even someone within the organization can't get in without permission. So it's a real strict process. Okay. Our HCL infrastructure, for example, HCL manages security for a whole lot of companies. So they'll have something like this. It's a pretty big screen. It's like your space station screen. And there are several operation centers in the organization. They have one for network, they have one for security, they have one for servers, they have one for business operations. The one in Singapore is in Singapore where I work. The security was outsourced to another company. So here the screens are very few. So the couple of managers will sit at the desk and they will be basically monitoring the dashboard and they'll be looking at the reports. If there is an issue and if it's open for say 3 hours, they'll immediately try to see why it's taking so long to fix. What else can be done? Okay. So this is a simplest. These are all real screens, by the way. This is how it is. If it's a small organization, there's usually one man with 3 screens like this who will be monitoring. Okay. This gives you an idea of how security works and how important it is. One thing is when there is a security incident happens, and if you know, for example, there is a very senior person in the organization, a senior vice president, whose laptop is causing security, the security team gets the authority to shut his laptop down. There's nothing he can do. There's nothing that person can do. He has to be shut down, and he will be shut down. You know, there have been instances where somebody say, "I'm an extremely senior person. I'm a near CEO person. You can't shut me down." Sorry, you don't have that opportunity. You will be shut down. The laptop will be shut down. The wireless will be switched off. Then it will be taken to a secure room where there is no Wi-Fi. The whole room is sealed, which means even your external Wi-Fi in the office cannot come here. And then they'll start cleaning up, fixing it. If it's a very VIP person, he will be given another alternate laptop temporarily. But then they have a real authority in this case in security. Okay. This is another extremely hot topic. The latest trends these days is use of artificial intelligence. You can just know that all of these things happen because this is a monster topic by itself. Basically, all the event logs are analyzed and like Amazon uses this real time, or HDFC Bank or ICICI Bank uses this real time. So someone once used my credit card, HDFC Bank credit card from Indonesia. Okay, I don't know who that is. I don't know how he got it. And I immediately got a call from HDFC Bank saying, "Sir, your credit card has been used in Indonesia. Have you used it?" I said, "No, I did not use it." So they shut down my credit card. The bank immediately raised a fraud transaction, and it prevented them from using the from transacting with my card. Now in India we have OTPs, but if you see many countries like US, Europe, there's no concept of OTP. All you need is your credit card number and the CVC number in the back, and the transaction happens. Right? It's a very important thing that these AI systems immediately prevent that, because remember, it's a reputational damage that hurts the companies more. Financial losses can be recovered, fines can be paid, right? Data theft can be managed, but the reputational damage often takes a long time to recover. Okay. I have a couple of case studies, but I know I'm out of time. Any questions? Dr. Anupama, can I take another 10-15 minutes? Do you have time?
Yes, sir. Maybe max by 1:50 we can close.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I'm going to share some case studies of how security is an extremely important component. And I've been through all of those. One of my jobs was a project management professional. You would have seen that in the CV. So I've been involved in some case in some of these. Right now, I'm only taking a couple of the big ones. I'm not taking all of these. There are thousands of cases, but these are things that you would not normally hear outside the organization. The first one is actually the e-procurement. Procurement is basically the process of buying goods and services. This is non-production items. If it is a non-production item, we call it procurement. If it is a production item, like let's say you're manufacturing jam, like Unilever does jam production. Right? You need strawberries, you need tomatoes, you need a lot of different fruits, you need sugar, you need some kind of preservatives. If that is, then it's called sourcing. But if you need, if you're going to buy laptops, all non-essential items, non-production items, then we call it procurement. Okay. Now, this whole procurement process is one of the biggest in the organization because no company actually manufactures its own raw materials. Raw materials fundamentally have to be procured either from mines, from farms, from jungles, from rivers, right? Metals, all of them has to be procured. Now,
Hello, sir. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb. Like, I'm just interrupting with one question because you were telling about the credit cards. So I recently faced an issue. Like, I had a Wi-Fi credit card, and I just went to an airport, and they didn't even ask a pin or anything. It was just on a swipe, things were getting deducted. So what if we lose such kind of credit cards? It's something like people can misutilize it in any way.
so yes, if on Indian websites, credit cards are by and large protected. India, Singapore, several Asian countries have the kind of protection where they seek an OTP. You know, it's called two-factor authentication. So it's generally protected. Uh, Again, in Western countries, if you're going to use Amazon.com, which I bought several things, there's no concept of OTP. You can directly use a CVC to purchase it. Now, if you're in India, you should be aware of social engineering. Somebody may call you and say, "Sir, we are from credit card company," so be careful. And again, it really depends on the site. Have you checked if you're using from Amazon? You're a bit more secure because it has SSL. But if you're not buying from a say site where you have an SSL certificate, good idea is to get it changed, get the security credit card changed. There are also some safety mechanisms. If you know there's a fraud happen, if you raise it within 8 hours or 24 hours, it really depends on your bank. Then you essentially trigger what is called a fraud mechanism, dispute mechanism, and you get your money back. Okay, but if I don't know which site you bought from, but if you know if you've got a trusted security SSL, you are a bit more safe.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, e-procurement is one of the biggest processes in any organization, even in the university. Procurements are, is a massive topic by itself. Even several governments are trying to move to e-procurement. India is actually trying to move to e-procurement. Okay, procurement has several components. There's tendering, there's auction, there's ordering. So basically, again, this is a very simple architecture, and security is the foundation for e-procurement. Right? Previously, if I want to buy, let's say, 1,000 laptops from an organization, I have to issue a classified account, and then I'll invite several organizations to come and bid for it. Nowadays, it's nothing like that. We have a catalog of all the service providers. The e-procurement team will send a request for quotation, and the suppliers will send a quotation. And now all these suppliers are somebody who's already vetted and approved in the business. So they have some kind of digital certificate, and then they send their request for quotation. Now all the quotations are very confidential, right? The lowest price may win, the best quality may win. We don't know that. And if any of these are compromised, and that's another legal issue, a supplier organization may sue, saying that my terms and quotations are compromised. So e-procurement is a huge part, and this is fundamentally driven by digital signature and encryption. Okay, I can give a lot more detail on this, but this is a very complex topic. This is a cloud-based. You can see the two firewalls, one separated by the internal SAP versus the external firewall to the suppliers. This is a cloud-based. The one I've seen was an internal to the organization. But by and large, most companies are moving to the cloud. SAP Ariba, for example, is an incredibly popular tool here. Okay, SAP Ariba is hosted by Ariba, and it's a cloud-based tool. I can tell you some of the organizations I work, their procurement runs into billions of dollars, 10 plus billion. The number may sound crazy to you, but believe me, it's real. You can actually look at their annual financial statement, the balance sheet, to understand what is the cost of goods purchased, right? It's called, there's some section in the business that you can see that that's the cost of procurement basically, and that's fundamentally enabled by digital signatures and encryption. The second case study I want to share briefly is e-auction. There's an auction coming in July 15th. If anybody is interested, Telangana government is selling some really prime land. They're expecting to, I think the price is about 25 crores per acre, roughly. It's a very beautiful land. I go there regularly for birding. Quite disappointed they're selling that land, but they're expecting to generate about 3,000 crores in that. You know, and this is entirely online marketplace. Okay, this is the Government of India website, and the auction happens online. And this is the instructions. This was just taken yesterday. They've slightly updated the instructions. This whole thing is running on digital signature and encryption. I told you, right? Cryptography is a foundation for the internet. It's a core building block for modern internet. So the first step is actually digital signature enrollment. If the buyer is not having digital signature, he may be anybody on the planet. You know, if he doesn't enroll for this process, there's no concept. And then once you buy the digital signature, you essentially have to get a e-tokens from the certifying authorities. Certifying authorities are people I showed you where you buy your SSL, right? So in this case, certifying authorities are people who give digital signature. In India, there's a list like TCS, about, I think 25, 30 companies, only they can give you digital signature. So you have to apply a token. So it's like a railway station token. You apply that token, and then you have to map that digital signature only to one account. You want to use a second account or you forgot the password, sorry, you have to reapply the process. So e-auction is a big one, and the Indian government did e-auction for coal blocks as well. The advantage of this is it's transparent, it's corruption free. Most of it is corruption free because how the e-auction bids, everything is securely done real time. Nobody knows that. Okay, there's an arbiter in the background. Arbitrator is somebody who's an independent person. There's also someone for the Indian government audit service. They'll also be sitting in the back watching the real time bids come in. And then as the lowest bid is selected, as the most appropriate bid is selected, they'll be seeing it real time. So it's quite secure. It also minimizes corruption, right? You've seen several instances where somebody land worth 10 crore is sold for 50 lakhs and within 3 months he'll sell it for 10 crore. Now all of that is no longer possible in this method. Okay. The last one I want to talk is EDI. This is something will be happening every day. Now you go to Reliance supermarket or you go to any of the bigger supermarkets. I don't think many Indians do it. Indian supermarkets, smaller ones do it. But there's something called as automated ordering. You know, you buy soap, you buy shampoo, you buy beauty care products. Any product that you buy, essentially, stock gets over in the particular shop, in the branch, right? And then somebody has to physically order. That's fast. What we do the modern day is something called as an EDI. EDI is an electronic data interchange. It's a fixed form. And if the stock falls, let's say I sell an average of 1,000 soaps a day, okay? And in a month, which means 30,000 soaps a day. And if there are a couple of festivals, maybe another 5,000 soaps. So my safety order will be 5,000, which means if it falls below 5,000 or 5 days worth of stock, there will be an automated trigger of reorder. And a typical supermarket sells anywhere up to 2,000 to 3,000 kinds of products, right? You know, imagine reordering all of them. It's a massive amount of effort. You need a full-time team for it. So what companies do is they use something called as an EDI. It's a predefined document, and all it does is once it reaches a safety stop, the order is triggered. Okay. Now, this is one AS2 is one provider of EDI, but you essentially see the EDI document is automatically prepared. Every product has a unique code, and then the code data gets filled in, the safe minimum order gets filled in, and then the digital encryption happens, right? You compress the package, then you sign it, then you encrypt it, then you use SSTP, then you send it to in this case, let's say Unilever is the one who's going to supply the products. It goes to Unilever. Unilever has a similar EDI decryptor. They'll decrypt it, verify it, decompress it, and then it will go through their automated application, which says it goes to their SAP, it goes to a supply chain process. Everything is automated, right? And then it says it processes it, and then the shipment is released. Everything is automated, right down to the payment. Okay, it happens every day. You know, we may not see it, but this is actually bread and butter of retail. Which is what we call as modern trade. In a supermarket, it happens a lot. Now imagine a company like Walmart, which has $400 billion in sales. This happens in real time. Okay. Now, another fundamentally data encryption and digital signatures, very, very important. Okay. This is the last slide. Basically, new models continue to be evolved. COVID has seen a lot of new models, and anything you do, which is nothing but when you explore new business models, we call that digital transformation. We've heard this term thousands of times. Security is a fundamental part of it. Okay, and what we have seen here are some of the basics, and every part of it requires security. And this is a real recent survey. Fundamentally, anyone who's thinking of digital transformation and new business models also have to rethink their security strategy. They want to evolve new security strategies to combat the online fraud, online issues, right? So that's the end of it. I know I've taken extra time. I'm sorry about that. Any questions?
So just a general question, but transactions we use Paytm, Google Pay, Phone Pay, and all these platforms, right? So what kind of security do these platforms so that to make sure they don't get breached?
Okay, good question. So UPI is, which is United Payments Interface, is a RBI mandated, the Reserve Bank of India mandated payment system. It's a pretty secure system. It definitely has some weaknesses, but fundamentally the weakness is not in the transaction system. The minute you enter your PIN and transact, it's a very secure system. It's robust and secure. So you can continue to use them. The weakness in Paytm or PhonePe or Google Pay is actually towards the end user. The minute you can get a UPI request. My father has received a UPI request saying, "Sir, please pay 5,000 rupees for this." And these days, almost all phones have fingerprint access. And unfortunately, he was at that time unlocked on the phone, and he tried just put his finger on the fingerprint, and the UPI got activated, and he lost 5,000 rupees. Okay, so the most of the time the payment is on the end user side. So if you're using something like UPI, it's a good idea to have a PIN where you have to manually enter. Now Google, for example, has mandated it. It doesn't take, Google Pay, for example, doesn't use fingerprint anymore, but some of the banks still use fingerprint. So in such cases like UPI, it's always better to enable PIN so that you don't accidentally complete the transaction, right? But by and large, the system is tested. Google itself is selling UPI to the US. There are similar concept of UPI which has been implemented in Indonesia very successfully, and that's based on the India model. Singapore had a similar model called Nets. The news is that they're also trying to do something similar to Indian model. So UPI by itself is secure, but again, the end user is the weakest point there.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I hope you found this useful. So if you have any questions, maybe I don't know how you want to work that out, Dr. Informa.
I just make sure that when we have a feedback form, if any questions or queries are there, definitely I can definitely post it to you. You can just answer them. And any questions right now, I think the students can ask here itself. Any questions, boys and girls? Maybe they are all having one more class after it is a lunch break for them. As it is a usual class timing, we have kept the webinar. So I think maybe there's no question from the student side.
Ma'am, I have another question.
Yes, Mahima, go ahead.
Yeah, so sir, at the beginning of the seminar, you visited this website which said haveibeenpawned.com. So I have visited the website too, but how is it that they get our information?
Okay, you asked a billion-dollar question. I'll answer that. But so hackers have a tendency to show off their wares. Okay, so they basically boast of they basically both. There are some areas. The term is called dark web. It's a dark web. It's not your traditional internet. There's a different means of accessing the dark web. Anyone who visits that is immediately in the attention of some federal law enforcement in some country, right? So even to visit it requires a huge amount of security and encryption. So they basically dump all the databases, hack databases onto that dark web. Okay? Now you can see, have I been pawned pulls up that database and has given this friendly website for us to verify. So you can see all the databases that they are using. Basically, there's a huge amount of, you can see 542 pawn websites, 11 billion pawned accounts, 202. So there's a lot of information. So they basically collect the database and they put it here. So that dark web is where this information comes. Now there could be a lot more sites where people have not posted their information. We wouldn't know it until someone announces it or until you are exploited. Okay, so don't take this have I pawn to be definitive. You can say that this is more inclusive of what we know so far, but it means that somehow your information has been breached. That's the only thing you can take away from that.
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
Yes, I think we have come to the end of this session. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session that we have. Sir, I want to tell you here is that we as a subject teachers, wherein we have a responsibility to cover the syllabus within the period of time, wherein this e-business, syllabus covers, as I'll just, tell you the syllabus. It contains security threats and aerial view, implementing e-commerce security, encryption, decryption, protecting client computers, e-commerce communication channels, web servers, encryption, SSL protocol, firewalls, cryptography methods, VPNs, protecting networks, policies, and procedure. I think from the beginning of this program, I've been keenly noticed that I have never shared this particular unit syllabus with you when we had talked about having a webinar. But I have noticed that every aspect of that particular unit, wherein each concept you have made our student to see them in a practically happening with live examples. I should definitely quote that. This is what the objective of this particular corporate academia means to all of us in the college. I think it will help. I'm sure the students have understood every aspect of concept, that I have taught them as a theory part of it, but they have learned practically, which will help them to understand from the exam point of view, as well as there would be an entrepreneur who is sitting here, a manager who would be taking care of, as you, maybe would definitely have a good exposure to this particular, webinar or from a concept that we discussed today. So I'm really very happy and thank you for having that patience and an excellent presentation. I think, all the teachers here are really understanding and, making that concept so easy to all of us. As a teachers, we would have taken a lot of time to prepare, but this is where practical exposure, which really means. I think I'm really thankful to Hari for being such a wonderful resource person for today's Corporate Academia Connect. And thank you so much for your kind presence and giving that lot of time to all of us. Thank you so much, Hari sir. Thank you so much. It's time to, yes, it's
the opportunity, and thanks for the patient listening as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think it's time to formally thank the August gathering. I request Mahima, 6M BBA student from B section, to render vote of thanks. Over to you, Mahima.
Yeah, thank you, Anupama ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mahima, as ma'am introduced, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to give the vote of thanks for today. I would like to thank Mr. Sri Hari K. Patibanda for taking some time out of his busy schedule and enlightening us with his knowledge. Mr. Srihari sir gave us a lot of interesting pointers, and I'm pretty sure all of us have grasped the concept of what e-commerce security is and how it works. I personally found the concept of cryptography and the use of public and private keys to encrypt and decrypt the data. It was very interesting, and he also told us how to identify the vulnerabilities and how to check if your websites that you're visiting are safe or if your passwords are safe. He also told us the steps that e-commerce takes, or like the websites take, to safeguard the client's information. It was very insightful, and I'm sure that in the vast array of information provided to us, the students have found tidbits which were noteworthy respectively. I would once again like to thank Mr. Srihari sir for this very informative session. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar, for making it all possible, and the HODs, Professor Jagdish Sir, Department of Business Administration, Dr. M.S. Nagraj Sir, Department of Commerce, for encouraging the students as well as the teachers to strive for the better. I would like to thank Dr. Shalini N. Ma'am, Dr. Anupama Ma'am, Professor Umesh Sarma Ma'am, Professor Yalappa Sir, and Professor Gokul Sir for organizing this seminar and for being a well-wisher. I would also like to thank Professor Divya Ma'am, Professor Rani Anthony Raj Ma'am, Professor Nandini Ma'am, and Professor Vijay Lakshmi Ma'am for their unwavering support. Finally, I would like to thank all the 4th SEM BCom students and 6th semester BBA students for having actively participated in the Corporate Academia Connect on the subject security for e-business and making it successful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Halima, having taken an active part in this event. On behalf of myself as a subject teacher, I wholeheartedly thank everyone, especially the resource person, Mr. Hari K. Patibanda, who is really have given us such a valuable time and the inputs to all our students, and Dr. Anil Kumar sir for having given us this opportunity. And he is a brain, he is a brain behind all these events which is happening here. And I would definitely like to thank HODs, Professor Jagdish sir, BBA department, and Professor Dr. Nagraj sir from BCom department for collaborating and supporting this event. And thank all the class teachers here, Vidya ma'am, Nandini ma'am from BCom department, and Rani ma'am, Divya ma'am from BBA department. I thank all the subject teachers who have taken really pain in bringing all the students here, and most importantly my students, our students of the college, who have been a wonderful spirit in listening to this particular event. Thank you everyone, and I hope this webinar and this industry academia connect, corporate connect, has really helped all of you, and I really thank each one of you for this particular thing. And I thank personally Gokul sir and Vandana ma'am, Prerna ma'am for supporting this event at this point of time. Thank you everyone. The feedback form is there. You can fill the feedback form, and definitely, if any questions are there, you can just mention the questions. I will definitely share it with Hari sir. I think Hari, please help us in drafting the case studies as well. We would be using the case studies as per instructions of our principal sir. Would be in the classes on a regular basis. So thank you everyone for this particular session. Thank you so much.
Sure, Dr. Luna. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Vandana ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Students, the feedback link is already posted in the chat box. Please fill the feedback for attendance. Thank you once again.